Welcome, everybody. How's everybody feeling so far? Last session of the day, and we saved the best for last. So I'm going to ask everyone to stand up for a second. Stand up. All right, shake the arms out. Come on, last session of the day, just get it all going, all right? We saved the best for last. All right, now have a seat here. I always like to do that. That's my little thing. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully you guys have had a great Appian Europe. A lot of exciting things, a lot of new features coming, and a lot of great customer success stories. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more about what Matt had talked earlier about in his opening keynote about legacy modernization. I mean, you know, here we are. I feel like I've been working on legacy modernization since the mid-90s, and it seems like it's a problem that it just never really goes away. And I was talking with a reporter early about this and what's different about this time and how we're going to solve this once and for all, or is this an ongoing thing? And today I'm going to share with you a lot about what's different about our approach, Appian's approach at this time to solving legacy modernization. So let's kind of break into this here. All right, yes, there you go. If you want to connect with Mark or I on LinkedIn, we post a lot of cool content. Feel free to take your QR code picture. All right, so let's kind of start out here. I've been with Appian for a little over a year, and I do a lot of traveling with Appian, and I meet with probably 200 CIOs, CTOs a year, and kind of want to share with you a little bit about what I'm hearing and to see if that resonates with you and if you're hearing these similar challenges. I mean, the first thing is, you know, talking to business users. They need more from the systems that are powering their business here, and they can't wait another year to move off these old systems. They need to move today. They need to move yesterday, and they can't have their operational data all over the place. There's no single source of truth, and in solving a lot of problems, most companies are like, my data's scattered everywhere. But IT leaders are getting frustrated as well, and they are frustrated with the pace that it takes, you know, to update a traditional API to connect the system, and they can't wait 3 months to do these things. They're looking to solve problems much faster. And then finally, CIOs are inundated with their backlog of just maintaining current systems that they can't even get to the modernization. I was working with a customer here in London earlier this year, and they're spending 95% of their IT budget on steady state maintenance. That really doesn't leave a whole lot of room for innovation and modernization. So I think, you know, if you look at the way companies are running today, their life's blood is really these core management systems. You know, ERP systems, ITSM systems, CRM, HR systems. They're not just kind of back office tools anymore. They're really the foundation for how organizations are operating on a day-to-day basis. You know, every process, every decision, every customer interaction seems to run through these systems at some point. And if you don't really have a strong core record management system in your different lines of business, you simply can't run. But it doesn't stop there. You know, beyond these core systems here, organizations also depend on a lot of other critical capabilities here. Mainframes, yes, there's still a tremendous amount of companies that still rely on mainframes for processing. Data warehouses have proliferated throughout companies now, network systems, and a whole host of other, you know, custom systems throughout the organization that store valuable information that these core systems need access to. And it's this information that leaders need in order to make truly informed business decisions. So this is where the problems start to arise, because it doesn't stop there. You saw all these great capabilities that we showcased today, but there's a lot of companies showcasing core capabilities. And so companies have started to embrace a lot of these new age capabilities here that go beyond these core systems. These enterprise capabilities are designed to accelerate automation and unlock even greater business value, as we talked about earlier today. You know, from intelligent autonomous agents, you can build them on a lot of different platforms, process mining, intelligent document processing, and more. These capabilities have become a critical part of the way companies are operating and how they can achieve their business results. But the real trick and the real truth is the business value is only achieved when you can connect all these core record systems with these critical capabilities. And that's where the challenge really appears for most organizations. Having all these disconnected and disjointed systems, it creates complexity. And the interoperability problems start to surface when you start to connect all of these different systems. I probably can literally say in the last 6 months, I've talked to about 30 different CTOs and CIOs that are having this problem. And I affectionately like to call this islands of automation or islands of excellence. They exist throughout your organization in pockets, and they're slowing companies down from modernizing. You have core record systems and you have intelligent enterprise capabilities isolated within a line of business. Oh, IT's got this really great ticketing system over here with all these great capabilities. How do I connect it with legal and these other areas? And so you have all these silos in your lines of business. And just like islands, the metaphor here, they limit connection, they curb growth, and they slow down your ability to achieve business value, and they hinder your ability to stay competitive and innovative. Now, they are okay for simple processes, right? And this is, again, I was talking to an analyst earlier about this, is that these are great. You can have all these disjointed and siloed systems if you just need to field help desk tickets, or you just need to log a purchase requisition through an SAP or ERP system, or maybe just do a leave request through Workday or something like that. But when you move into much more complex processes, this whole thing falls apart and it fails. I mean, if you look at problems like employee onboarding, customer claims, patient care, supply chain management, these are problems that require interaction with multiple lines of business, multiple technical capabilities, and multiple record systems. And you need a lot of different technologies to bring all these different areas together in order to solve this problem. And the reason that people haven't been able to solve this problem is because islands address problems in silos. And I would say the majority of companies that I meet with, probably 75% of them, they're still solving problems in silos. Let's just worry about the systems of record and managing data. It wasn't meant to do these cross-departmental workflows. Automation that is targeted just solely at one line of business. Low-code tools to just maybe build an app within one area, and they're not made for complex process. That was never in mind when they were designed. So that's why companies are turning to unified orchestration platforms. I think Gartner affectionately refers to this as business orchestration and automation technology platforms. BOAT. Yes, a boat can help you get off the island. Yeah, that's a little tongue-in-cheek there. But if you think about this is what you need to solve complex problems. And more companies are turning towards business orchestration platforms like Appian. I was just downstairs earlier meeting with Gartner, and they said it is the most downloaded document that they've ever had of all the research they've done is this business orchestration automation technology platform. And I'm happy to say we are in the Magic Quadrant. There's a couple other players in that quadrant too, but I'm going to point out some of the differences today. But the reason that companies and CIOs are obsessed with boat platforms like Appian is they unify all of these siloed capabilities, and they bring together all of these compelling enterprise capabilities like AI agents and data fabric and IDP, and they bring them together with all of your core systems. And by bringing together all of these capabilities in a unified and cohesive set of capabilities, this is how Appian is enabling you to connect all these different islands of automation and orchestrate critical business processes across your different business lines. And the reason that this is really critical moving forward is because Appian's point of view is we look at modern applications as orchestrations. If you look at the typical applications that you're building, and I think this is an example of a customer order, how many different lines of business do they cross, and how many different capabilities do they cross? We've all seen how AI is transforming software development. We saw with Composer earlier, but the real question you have to ask yourself, at your company, what kind of modern applications is your organization going to build moving forward? Because I can tell you right now, the future is not more siloed applications. People are shifting away from that. They're trying to cut costs, consolidate, the technical sprawl. Instead, people and companies globally are moving increasingly towards a much more connected digital environment where apps don't just process transactions and isolations, they orchestrate seamless handoffs between people and systems and AI. And that is why this is so critical. Because when you start looking at applications as a unified business orchestration, This is where the real business transformation and business value occurs, where business leaders can now get insight and can directly see and actually understand and refine how their business is operating. That's something they've never been able to do before. And they can do it right within the application itself. We talked about some examples earlier with our process mining. You're orchestrating all these different areas and then getting real-time insight into where bottlenecks exist. This is what modern applications should look like: connected, intelligent, and process-driven. So what's Appian's approach? Well, it is to provide your organization with all of this unified and cohesiveness. And you'll notice I keep using those two words, unified and cohesive, because there's a lot of technology platforms that claim to have all these capabilities. I'm quite familiar with a few of them. And I can tell you, if you look at them on paper, you check all the same boxes, right? We have all the same capabilities. But when you actually sit down to use the platform to orchestrate a business process, that's where you separate them out. And that's where Appian really shines. Because we were never born out of a silo. We were never born out of a help desk request or an HR case or even a customer relationship management use case. Appian wasn't even born as a software company. We were founded doing very complex cross-departmental implementations for the US government. And we built the platform in order to make this easier, more reliable, and more consistent. And so that's at the heart of our DNA and the architecture of our platform. Every company's got multiple lines of business, and you're trying to connect it with all of these systems of record, some legacy, some modern, and that's where our platform shines, to bring together all of these capabilities in a seamless way, and that's what allows you to drive building these complex business applications that solve real business problems. Mortgage lending, client onboarding, fund transfers, card and payment disputes, financial and crime and fraud investigations. These are very, very complex things where you have to pull together multiple lines of business and multiple systems, and this is where Appian really shines. So how is this applying to legacy modernization? Well, Appian and Appian's customers are taking a very different approach. You've heard a lot about this term, the agility layer. And really what our point of view on this is that with all of these capabilities you've seen throughout today on Appian, we were designed for rapid transformation on top of your existing systems of record. And probably a lot of familiar logos out there that a lot of you have talked to me individually and over the last year and a half about how do I connect these systems. We look at those as systems of record. They are transactional systems. They lack workflow, and they're typically very expensive and slow to transform. And how many people have tried to transform with those systems and spent a whole lot of money and not seen many results? The problem is you're using a system for something it wasn't designed for. Appian is a system of rapid transformation and agility. That's what we're good at. Those other systems are good at siloed capabilities and storing information. It's about using the right technology to solve the right problem. Every company needs both. You need systems of ability and rapid transformation, and you need systems of record. Where companies run into problems and they acquire a whole lot of technical debt is where they're using the wrong technology to solve the wrong problem. It's two complementary categories of software: systems of record, systems of transformation. You need both. And so what this kind of looks like is Appian is this layer of agility driving supplier onboarding and master data management and procurement, and using our intelligent patented data fabric, and I'll keep using that word patented, to connect all these systems. You might be going through an SAP transformation, and you need this layer of agility to help bridge the gap between going from ECC on-prem to S/4HANA in the cloud. And you need to connect it with all these other systems. I need some information from Guidewire. I need some sales information. I need some procurement information. Think about all the complex processes that you require where you need to interact with all these different departments and these different systems. This is where Appian shines. You can innovate faster because you're decoupling the changing and the migration of your legacy systems of record from your ability to provide business transformation today. You don't have to wait to get done with that massive ERP transformation before you start modernizing supplier onboarding. And you can reduce the risk by shipping incremental capabilities that you can measure. But the outcomes, they're very clear. You can reduce the delivery cycles and the operating cost. These underlying systems are typically very expensive and very lengthy time to transform. Appian can honestly transform maybe in about 20% of the time it takes to do in some of these other systems. And you can stand up new capabilities fast without risking changing these underlying platforms that people are like, stay away from my platform. You can now orchestrate these end-to-end workflows. Once you put in place that intelligent data fabric, you've decoupled and abstracted your processing from all your systems of record. It gives you a whole lot more flexibility. And that's why this morning in my keynote, I'm stressing this is the foundation. If you want to use AI and get value, you need to set up this intelligent data fabric first. So what are the use cases that people are solving with this paradigm? Things that you run into very quite often: master data creation and update, journal entry posting, supplier data updates, tasks like onboarding, order to cash, procure to pay, those monthly endly closeout procedures in finance where you have to have 1 million different people review and approve stuff. Approvals. This is an area where I've seen companies suffer, where they have information in all these systems of record, but yet I have to route it around to 10 different departments to approve a new profit or cost center being updated. Reporting. This is where Appian shines, bringing together all the complex data from all over the organization to provide actionable reports. Gaps in the system to meet regulatory reporting and statutory requirements, and obviously customer interactions, KYC, client intake and onboarding. These are the type of use cases we see our customers getting tremendous business value today. This really takes you from the current paradigm where most companies are. This past kind of messy environment where you have point solutions, you have spreadsheets, you have email, you have shared folders in SharePoint, you've got all these homegrown apps, you've got these highly customized legacy systems of record, and you've got some transitioning into these future authorized, core, clean core systems. And Appian can take you from this existing landscape into a new paradigm, where you can use and leverage some of our prepackaged solutions that we have and some of our partners have as well. Very tailored, custom, specific process automation. And then we're also going to advise you and help you realize what should stay in these systems of record, a part of your clean and modern core. Not everything should be extracted from these areas and these underlying systems and put into Appian. And the results are just remarkable, the customers that are following this paradigm. Faster PR to PO cycles, the increased scale of procurement managers and AP teams, lower spend supplier discounting for waiting for things to go back and forth. Huge time and cost savings, and I'll tell you, it's a hell of a lot cheaper and faster to develop an Appian than maybe ABAP or for those SAP developers out there. You get to leverage your existing domain experts because they're not focused on the laborious task of trying to update SAP or Salesforce or Oracle. And you can now automate things that would take 6 months in days and weeks. Literally a year ago when I was at Appian Europe last year, and some people might remember I had sunglasses on, I had an allergic reaction to something, but I was meeting with a customer, a local customer here, and he owned the Appian practice at his company, and he was fighting with the SAP practice, and they were saying, who should do supplier onboarding? And the SAP practice says, we got it. And after 6 months, they hadn't built anything, or they built very little. And under his direction, he built the supplier onboarding app in under a month. Results speak. Faster migrations, and really the bottom line, optimizing your IT spend for innovation. So that example of that customer that's spending 95% on steady state, think about how you can dramatically open that up and get to where I think we have a pharmaceutical company that's only spending about 40% of their annual IT spend on steady state and 60% on innovation. This is where you want to be at. And one of the things that makes this really possible, and I don't know if I drove the point home enough this morning, it's our data fabric. Think about taking all of the complexity out of these underlying systems of record, and think about how much knowledge you have to have in order to pull like procurement data or manifest data out of SAP or Coupa or Riva. And now imagine mapping all of that with our intelligent data fabric to a logical business object. Once you do that, now you can move at pace. Think about having all of these business entities and these business objects being managed for you in our data layer, virtually. Read, write, scalability. And all you have to do is write and configure the workflows intelligent. Now imagine plugging your AI into all of this. It doesn't have to go into these underlying systems. It just has to deal with this data fabric to pull in information. This is what's powerful. Enough theory. Let's talk about some customer examples, right? When I was a customer, that was my favorite thing. I wanted to hear examples. So we've changed the names to protect the guilty. So this is something in the US military, and they have decided to standardize on Appian as their layer of agility on top of, I think, 25 instances of SAP. And what they are doing with this is they are completely modernizing all the interactions with their manpower out in the field. So they are seeing right off the bat an 8x efficiency in getting assets to the front line. That's just literally in ordering ammunition or materials, tanks, or things of that nature. Literally before this, somebody had to send an email from the field, it went into somebody's inbox, they had to manually type it into SAP. That's how they ordered equipment. Can't see anything going wrong there. So they're saving over 500,000 hours a year, and they're automating all of these ERP tasks. They're projected to save about $73 million a year, all by using Appian as the agility layer. Another compelling example is a food manufacturer. They were looking to streamline their vendor management. Again, a lot of ERP systems underneath there. It was a complex, siloed environment. All those silos, those islands of automation, this company had it on steroids. And they were able to get a 99% data accuracy mapping SAP shipping costs. Think about it, just by shipping and streamlining their vendor management as Appian is the agility layer, they were then also able to ultimately onboard their vendors 50% faster. This is material things. This isn't an administrative task. This isn't a leave request or an IT request or a personnel request. These are material things that allow a company to operate and transform in a very different area. You know, I know our CTO refers to this as boring AI at times here, but it produces amazing results. 30% reduction in accounts payable exceptions. Could you imagine that? How much time that they were spending and wasting in all this exception handling because they didn't have an agility layer on top of their accounts payable system. And literally, their first deployment in 8 weeks. I was in Japan in September with our CEO, Matt, for, well, I think our third Appian Around the World in Tokyo. And I was up there with the group CIO of Hitachi. And he was talking about how he'd used our data fabric to unify 260 CRM systems. And I asked him, hey, look, Hitachi, you guys have a monumental IT budget. You could have picked any technology. Why did you pick Appian? And he's like, well, there were a lot of reasons. He said, but the number one reason, time to value. It was the one technology that we could deploy a solution faster than any other technology. And so don't underestimate the time, that 8-week deployment in the first release. All right, let's see, what do we got here? This thing's not working again. I think we need to invest some more money in batteries or something like that. So there we go. Another military example. And what I like about this one is that this was not just an agility layer play, but this was a consolidation. If this thing would work. I don't know if we need another clicker here, so let me see. Yes, they consolidated 7 legacy systems down, and they replaced them into one seamless system with Appian. This was to manage all of the contract lifecycle management for this military agency. The total estimated savings, $83 million. I think we should have charged more for this, I'll be honest with you. But they were able to standardize their contract writing amongst all of their offices throughout the globe, really. And they were able to process 14,000 contracts in 10 months, and they already have 4,000 active users on this system. So I think the takeaways from this thing is one of their core processes, awarding contracts, and they were able to standardize this, rationalize 7 legacy systems they no longer have to maintain, and they already have 4,000 active users, and they've processed 15,000 contracts already. This is a solution that can scale. All right, I got one more example. And this is from a pharmaceutical manufacturer who was looking to improve the clinical supply chain. And they were doing this so that they could help ensure that clinical trials are conducted safely and efficiently and much faster in compliance with all their regulations. They were able to increase their global schedule adherence to that back in 2022 by 20%. They were able to reduce the issue rates that they were encountering in getting medical supplies to trials by 15% in the first year. They were able to get, for the first time, increased visibility about where items were in the entire supply chain for their medical, for the medical trials. And overall, a 17% reduction in the cycle time to get supplies out to the field for clinical trials. So how'd they do this? Well, let's take a look at where they started. How did a clinical supply manager get everything down to the clinical operations? It was a mess. A lot of SAP in there, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of email. The challenges were immense. Very manual and time-consuming processes, and this is what exists in most companies. Siloed systems within lines of business, nothing connecting them. Many versions of the truth. Well, depending upon who you spoke to, you'd find out the status of an item in a different area. Poor communication between the groups, and there was a lot of variability across their different sites depending upon where you were getting the supplies from. Well, they reimagined this as a seamless workflow on Appian, where all of their manufacturing team, their quality assurance team, all coming into one system for the protocol design, the forecasting, the distribution, all the way through the monitoring. And they used our intelligent data fabric to extract them from all these underlying systems. They didn't go away, but they didn't have to go in. We handled that for them. And so let me break it down for you a little further to show you the three main areas that they used our platform and how they used it. First, notifications. Next, the scheduling and the release of the supplies. And then third, and probably most importantly, the monitoring and the visibility that allowed them to do demand and forecasting and capacity planning. So the first area, automated notifications. You might think of this as table stakes here, but creating business rules that would alert people proactively where the delays were immediately so that they could take action. No more waiting for somebody to respond in an inbox. They had a tailored workspace that they built out on our platform that allowed them to see the notifications in different countries where the problems were. And again, some of these people were not walking around with their laptops, but everybody was walking around with their phones. They would get automated tasks either via email notifications or mobile alerts in a standardized, consistent manner so that everyone could take action as soon as an issue was encountered. Let's talk about the scheduling and the release. They were able to natively put together and bring in all this SAP purchase order data and visualize it instantly. So they could see the target delivery dates, they could see the release schedule dates, and they could monitor all the different facets of a job of releasing a supply. They were using AI, as you've heard a lot about today, for intelligent document processing to automate quick and accurate data extraction from all of these invoices and business documents rapidly. This was slowing them down tremendously. And of course, using our native data fabric, integrations that we have out of the box to connect and build out all those business objects, but really just bring together one single source of truth. That example from Japan, where I was up there with the group CIO of Hitachi, he had the best quote. He's like, we had so many different versions of sales data that Appian's data fabric created the golden record set. I'm like, is that like a Willy Wonka reference, like the golden ticket? But that's really what it is for most companies. They have so many versions of the truth that single source of truth becomes the golden record set that people can rely on. And finally, the monitoring the visibility. This is an ongoing process. This isn't a one-time thing. So they were able to use our Process HQ to report on the demand and the capacity planning for strategic and long-term planning based on future projections. They could never do this in their old environment. They weren't even capable of it. And now they could have real-time dynamic dashboards that leaders of the company could monitor the supply chain and make proactive strategic plans just by looking at this in real time. And I think this is a great quote. These are some of the things they were able to do with Appian that they did not even have the ability to do before. It wasn't even whether they wanted to do it before. They just couldn't do it. And this is really Appian enabling this rapid transformation. All right, from now I want to pivot, and I would like to invite Mark up here to give us a little demonstration of how this all comes together. Mark?
Thanks, Gregg. Good afternoon, all. I think Gregg has the wrong job within Appian. He should be an AE. He talks too long. So now I need to solve it again and be an SE and make sure that you are out on time to have the drinks. So let's start. Gregg showed this slide before. I changed it a little bit to make sure that the story that I'm going to tell is fitting the slide. So I'm going to talk about the agility layer in the manufacturing space. And of course, within manufacturing, you have different business apps than you have in finance or in insurance. I will give you a high-level overview of a journey from a quality issue that is being found somewhere on the shop floor to a supplier risk review, into engineering changes, new supplier being onboarded, and in the end, to closing in a financial reconciliation. That is spanning across all business applications. So it's not one single business app that I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you multiple. Bear with me. I will do it quickly, and I won't go into much detail. If you want more detail, there are many SEs out there that can tell the story for your particular business. So let's start with the dashboard that a quality engineer could have, where he or she, when an issue is identified, can log and track the issue. It is the start of a workflow. It's not the start of an email communication, phoning, whatever. It is a start of a structured workflow that captures context, traceability, and a decision history, all from within the specific application for this particular engineer. As you can see on the left-hand side, it is a little bit blurry on here. I deliberately put all of the different applications on here as well. Typically, you only see your own application, but for the sake of the demo, all of them are there. So once the issue is being identified and logged, within manufacturing, there is a process called corrective action and preventive action, which basically means we're going to find out what happened, what the issue was, and how are we going to solve it going forward. So also here, ownerships change from an issue identified into finding a solution. What do we need to do? From there on, one of the potential outcomes of that corrective action could be the supplier is at risk. We need to find a new supplier. So we swivel over to the actual supplier risk manager. He, of course, has all the insights from the different systems in one single dashboard on the supplier risk score, the performance trends, all of the high risks from that particular supplier or other suppliers across the globe. The moment that the information from the CAPA and the supplier risk score comes together, you can identify we need to find a new supplier for this particular part. Then, of course, you can use Appian to trigger from a procurement, source a new supplier, and help onboard that supplier in a coordinated manner, doing the compliance checks, financial validations, quality audits, and everything being audited and tracked. And of course, you can use Appian AI to assist in that onboarding by validating the incoming documents, checking the certifications, etc. So once the new supplier is found, there is a new part number in all of the systems. You need to start using that within the plants. So then the engineering product manager needs to make a change order to update the bill of material. So once that's done, Appian is pushing that change back to all of the underlying systems. So no one is guessing which version is correct. They are all working on the same information. Once the bill of material is updated, you can of course start using it, start ordering those parts, keep track of if those parts are coming in correctly, monitoring arrival times, and act on potential issues from a purchase order or a order's perspective. So when everything is going well, suppliers want to get paid. And they want to get paid fast as well. So of course, you can leverage Appian Doc Center in that case to automatically validate incoming invoices with their actual purchase orders and the actual delivery of goods to automate and do straight-through processing and only handle exceptions from an accounts payable perspective. So I rushed through all of the different business applications that are all connected through the underlying platform. And that is basically the agility layer in action. And we are not replacing your ERP, CRM, or other systems. We leave those systems intact, stable, and clean. And what Appian basically does is orchestrate the work across them without customizing the core. That means faster time to market because the change happens in the workflow layer and not in the code base of your different applications. It also means that it remains simple to upgrade those underlying systems. So your upgrade part of the core systems is easy and can be done much quicker. And it means also that the business can adapt quickly because the process logic lives where change is expected in Appian. This is how you become fast without becoming fragile. And this is also how you can scale without breaking your foundations. And this is how the business becomes agile. So with that, I think I'm on time for the Q&A. And then you are on time for the drinks. So thanks. And if there are any questions, you can put them in the app or you can shout them, whatever you prefer. So we don't have any questions on the app yet.
Any questions in the audience?
Any questions in the audience? We can also have questions during the drinks.
Are you thirsty? Because you mentioned drinks quite a few times.
I'm definitely thirsty.
Yep. There we go.
You've mentioned the data fabric more than 3 times today. Could you give us a bit more color about what's involved in that? Because you said that's the first step.
Can you elaborate the question a little bit more, what you're looking for exactly? Because our data fabric is...
So if seeing all the great things that are being promised and then being told, first of all, you need to put the data fabric in place, is that a week, a month, a year? Is that across the whole organization, or is it just, can I target that?
Good question.
I would say you would start with where your pain is the biggest. And you're not going to build a data fabric across all of your applications and all of your data silos in the beginning. You start with identifying which data do I need to solve a particular use case, a particular business application. And from there on, you're expanding your data fabric the more use cases you're going to build on Appian. So I would say start small, deliver value fast, and then continue from there on.
It's a different paradigm than I think people think about integrations. I mean, I think when you start talking about integrations, I was talking with a banking customer in Asia recently, and they were talking about APIs, and they were still thinking about integrations in that really painful way that we all went through, writing queries and putting together connections. And the best analogy I can give you without getting into a whole lot of detail would be traditionally most companies that have data warehouses or zero copy are thinking about still just remote tables and just masking the data and still having to do complex queries that don't scale. And I would the analogy is picture the telephone operator switching everything manually in those black and white photos with the headset, and that's you had to wait for someone to do that. And that obviously slowed things down. It required a lot to maintain. Those things could break, and it was very brittle, and it wasn't scalable. Now imagine Appian's virtual data fabric with 16 patents as your NVIDIA GPU AI chip that can handle tens of millions of transactions intelligently per second. It's a completely different paradigm and a different way to start thinking about your integrations. You're leaving your data in these systems at rest. You're not taking them out. I mean, you're getting a cache copy that's secure and stuff like that so you can move faster, but you're not moving this data around these different systems. So the majority of the time you would spend with a partner or an integration person is configuring that. What are the business object layer that I need to create ultimately? And then the majority of the time, it's just configuring it. So there's no one answer of how long it would take, because it depends on your environment, how complex it is, and what are your needs, and what do you want to do with it. I mean, yes, I would say start small, but given the dream big. You know, given the pace at which our customers are automating, we're seeing this pick up very quickly. So.
Hi. One question that I had was, we're discussing about the agility of Appian as a platform that provides really quick deliveries, right? High time to market, actually low time to market. But what have you seen missing from organizations that don't realize that quick time to market? Because Appian is a low-code platform, okay? But there are many cases where organizations are, in quotes, questioning that because they don't see this low time to market.
Well, there's a couple things to unpack there. I think first, you know, not all integration partners are created equal. Sorry. And look, I spent 15 years in the US government hiring contractors and probably implemented like every software platform there is. If you're gonna, whether it's Appian's customer success, our professional services, it's a partner, it's internal people, and you're gonna have them do a project with a technology, I always like to ask for examples of where the people that are assigned to my project have done this before. Or are they learning on my dime? You know, I've seen that throughout the years. I'm gonna bid with this team and then I'm gonna supply you with the rookies and they gotta learn. And that's, I would say that's a good third of the results there. Look, our technology is powerful and flexible. And you could do things the right way and the wrong way with it. And seeing people do things the wrong way, or what I first learned about when I came to Appian is that we've changed our platform a lot over the years and we've added a lot of new capabilities. And the best thing about Appian is we've made our platform completely backwards compatible with previous versions. The worst thing about the Appian platform is we made it completely backwards compatible with previous versions. We never force certain customers to move to the new capabilities, so they're stuck with a lot of the old capabilities and they can't take advantage of Data Fabric because they're using CDTs from 10 years ago. And so that is another reason why I've seen a lot of failed implementations or slowed implementations. But probably the biggest reason has nothing to do with technology. It's culture. That is the number one problem. Every company that I've met with over the last 5 to 10 years, there's more than enough technology to solve all of your problems. People don't like to change. People will fight change. People become juvenile when it comes to change. But what does everybody have in common? As a species, we are obsessed with pain. Okay? And so people spend 10 times more on painkillers than they do on vitamins. What does that tell you? If you want to connect with people, and you want to get your company to change, you have to connect with people on the painful things about their job. And every employee in every company, from the CEO to the janitor, have painful things they would like to eliminate from their daily job. And if you can connect with them on that, you will get people to come along and buy into that change. And you've got to find those micro moments, because that's going to be different for every employee, every department, and every system that you're trying to replace. I think there was another question over here.
Yeah, thank you. Another question around Data Fabric. See, in your example, you showed that the Data Fabric's collecting the data directly from enterprise systems, and you'd expect that any established organization will have some sort of data warehousing already in place. We have spent tooling and technology to bring in all this data, normalize, have insights.
Yeah.
So will we have to do it all over again?
No. I mean, you can actually plug our Data Fabric into data lakes or data warehouses. You don't have to redo any of that. I mean, we have a lot of customers that have built huge data lakes and data warehouses. They're not going to rebuild it, but you can actually connect our Data Fabric into that so our agents can have access to that.
Yeah,
to do that.
One thing to keep in mind though is that if you have a layer in between your actual source and a data lake or a data warehouse, there is delay in getting the information to the business. So the moment that you have a layer in between, like a data lake, expect that applications are in real time. We have a customer that is using Databricks as the layer of, first needs to go to Databricks. It needs to go into bronze, silver, gold before you can actually start using it. So before we can actually see it back in the Appian application, it takes time. We can write directly to the source, but we can't read. So from that perspective, it really depends on your architecture. But from a data fabric, it doesn't matter whether we are connecting directly into the source or to a middleware layer, like a API gateway, data warehouse, whatever your architecture is.
Bottom line is you can leverage your existing investments. You don't have to redo it. You can redo it if you want to optimize certain things, and we've seen people do that, pull things out there because they want that more optimal performance. But I challenge you, other vendors that say they have a data fabric, they're tapping into other vendors, data lakes and data warehouses, and that's what I've seen. Peel back the layers when somebody says they have a data fabric, prove it. And you'll find remote tables, you will find Snowflake, you will find a bunch of other technology underneath that that is not the same as what we're talking about. So, all right, well, listen, thank you for coming today. We got drinks out there. Stop us, we'll continue the conversation. Thank you.